As we close out this year, there have been the usual assortment of creative animated films from around the world that utilize imaginative styles to tell their stories. From big budget sequels to originals, I've enjoyed a number of the animated movies that hit screens this year. We even got to see movies that were in danger of not being released, and in this day and age, when it seems like generative AI is seemingly taking over, that makes one appreciate the human-devised animated movies like the ones on this list. So let me begin the countdown, although I assume some people will switch the video off when they see the first movie on my list. Fixed. There was some anger at this movie when the trailer was released, and yes, on the surface it does seem like a bunch of sophomoric jokes. However, what I appreciated about Fixed is the way it observed dog behavior and found humor in the unusual things that canines do or their owners. What also stood out to me is that it's essentially a story about friendship and the camaraderie that the lead dog Bull has with his pals. Gendy Tartakovsky and his co-writer John Vitti came up with some humorous scenarios for the dogs to get into, and their conversations have a natural rhythm. Tartakovsky cited Judd Apatow films as an influence, and you definitely see a lot of that here. And as usual with him, there's a lot of expressiveness and funny physical comedy in the animation, with him even adapting the character designs of Disney movies like 101 Dalmatians into his particular style. He just seemed to completely let loose with Fixed, but I don't think he went too overboard either, somehow managing to create a sweet romantic comedy out of a dog preparing to be neutered. K-pop Demon Hunters. It's impressive what a cultural phenomenon this has become, and watching the movie it's easy to see why, as Maggie Kang and Chris Apahans injected a lot of infectious energy and impressive musical numbers into this. They do so well in combining the action sequences with the songs, with each song bringing something to the table. Golden and Soda Pop are certainly catchy tunes, although my favorite song on the soundtrack is What It Sounds Like, which serves as a fitting anthem for the three main heroes and their friendship. The Demon Hunters become distinct characters, with Rumi having the needed sympathy as she deals with a big secret. The film uses her fear of what might happen upon this being found out to dig into her character in a theme on insecurity. Zoe's hyper-personality and Mira's deadpan humor add a lot to those characters too, and it becomes easy to see why Huntress becomes a big deal in both the world of K-pop Demon Hunters and in real life too. The anime-inspired look of the movie adds to the appeal, with the characters giving some hilariously exaggerated expressions, and with the way it uses Korean culture and mythology, this becomes an entertaining ride. Unsurprisingly, a sequel is already in the works, and this first movie manages to lay the groundwork for what could be further explored in the next adventure. Predator Killer of Killers. Dan Trachtenberg has become the new person in charge of the Predator franchise, and what's neat is how he's given each film their own feel. This anthology film gives us 3 exciting stories that bring plenty of appealing action and Predator goodness. My favorite segment was the one set in Japan, which relies entirely on the lack of dialogue to explore the dynamic between these two brothers and how this Predator then gets thrown into the mix. The other storylines also deliver, making good use of a snowy Viking setting and fighter planes in World War II. Each segment is unique in their own way, exploring specific themes and tying nicely with the Predator's plan of looking for prey. The way the film brings everything together is also quite clever without feeling forced. This was a really good way for Trachtenberg to explore other ideas he might have had for Predator films while taking advantage of the animation medium to do more of those aliens that might have been difficult to pull off in live action. I definitely put Killer of Killers up there with Prey and the first Predator movie as one of the best things to come out of the franchise, and I hope to see more animated films in this series. Little Amelie, or The Character Brain. A unique take on coming-of-age stories, this film manages to create a heartfelt journey for its title character as she learns about the world. While our interactions with her family provide both funny and heartbreaking moments, the strongest aspect of the story comes from Amelie's growing friendship with a housemaid Nishio-san. The interactions together are very sweet, and the connection becomes lovely to watch grow stronger. The film tackles themes like death with the needed gravitas and understanding, and it also manages to touch on how we cannot let xenophobia make us distrustful of others. How long should we let trauma affect the way we treat someone? That's one of the questions posed by the movie, which answers with plenty of depth. The visuals are very striking too, especially when it goes into Amelie's imagination and how she views the world. From our early scenes starting to crawl around to the later moments that highlight her intelligence, we truly get to see Amelie's development through the course of the story, and it's highlighted well through the animation. The Japanese setting is especially used to good effect. Little Amelie impressively packs a lot of story through its brisk runtime and manages to tackle the drama with respect for the characters we're following. Dogman. Embracing the silliness of Dave Pilkey, Peter Hastings gave this adaptation of the graphic novel series the right level of energy and wackiness. The very concept of this policeman who gets combined with his dog is so ludicrous, and Hastings completely understands the best way to tackle that. I laughed through pretty much the entire runtime as the jokes fly fast, and we get a wonderful variety of gags, ranging from meta humor to dog-related bits. In addition to Dogman being a likable and sympathetic character, Petey the Cat becomes a highly entertaining villain. Pete Davidson especially finds the right voice for Petey, and he gets a lot of very funny moments with the kid and clone of himself. The animation adds to the appealing humor of the film, replicating Pilkey's distinctive art style and matching what's so enjoyable about his work. However, in between the hilarious running gags and other bits of comedy, there's also a touching story about trying to find your place in the world, and the film does not shy away from the cost of becoming Dogman. The film strikes that right balance without forgetting what kind of movie it is, whether we're being treated to a joke where words are popping on the screen, or watching Dogman trying to find a nice home. There was plenty to enjoy in this crazy comedy. Chainsaw Man the movie Reze Arc. Before watching this movie, I admit to having no familiarity with the manga and television series. You might think that would cause me to feel left out and confused, and yet the filmmakers succeeded in making this very accessible. I quickly understood the premise and the deal with these characters. The idea of these devil hunters who could transform into all kinds of crazy beings is an inventive one, and the filmmakers used that concept to lead into all kinds of wild action sequences. Although even before we get to that point, the lives of the characters are ones that become interesting. There's a lot of humor out of lead character Denji's interactions with the energetic power, and I also like getting to know the other devil hunters on patrol. My favorite was Angel Devil, who has some interesting conversations about death and proves his skill in the action scenes. The romance that develops between Denji and Reze is also well done and goes into a truly wild direction. Director Tatsuya Yoshihara manages to bounce between the more character-based scenes and the more horror-like moments. And then there's the action, which becomes especially non-stop in the third act and has an impressive scale as the stakes get higher and higher. Chainsaw Man the movie did make me curious to give the television series a look one day, and that it only consists of 12 episodes is especially inviting. But even not knowing the lore beforehand, I found myself getting invested in the movie's events. Zootopia 2. Doing what a sequel should do by further expanding the world, the decision to add reptiles into the mix allows for a story that explores the effect of xenophobia and how we can sometimes be taught to hate another just for their differences. The character of Gary the Snake was a particularly great addition, with the needed sympathy for everything he has gone through and his attempts to right a wrong. I liked how it delved further into the history of Zootopia, giving another understanding for why the city functions the way it does. We even get some new locations, with one highlight coming from a wetlands where semi-aquatic mammals like walruses live. Then there's the Judy-Nick working relationship, which nicely develops them as it shows their different ways of solving this case they are thrust into. However, the film avoids turning them into a romantic couple, which I especially appreciate. The movie is primarily a buddy cop movie, and it manages to take the familiar formula of those movies and do something that fits with the tone and concept of this series. The comedy in Zootopia 2 remains successful with the usual assortment of clever animal puns and other jokes related to the specific species. Byron Howard and Jared Bush even find good uses for pop culture references, and there are a lot of great visual gags scattered throughout. This thus becomes a zippy and entertaining expansion to the first Zootopia and shows the endless possibilities of this world. The Bad Guys 2. Boy, this certainly is quite the year for furry animal sequels. I really enjoyed the first film about these criminals who turned good, and Pierre Perifel directs another delightful caper with the second one. I like how the sequel is about how the bad guys try to enter this next phase of their life and the difficulties that come with that, creating the needed sympathy for Mr. Wolf in particular. The new group of criminals become compelling characters in their own right and succeed in being quite ruthless, raising the stakes further. The heist sequences are cleverly put together, with part of the fun coming from how they pull them off. The bad guys are even brought to outer space in a Mission Impossible-inspired sequence that serves as one of the film's highlights. The humor remains strong, with some of my favorite jokes coming from the bad guys' interactions with the police chief. The movie even gets some funny bits out of a fart joke involving Mr. Piranha. The animation, which feels like a fusion of European comic books and Japanese anime sensibilities, adds to the appeal of these movies, with Perifel and the artist doing so many funny things with the characters' facial expressions and even the crowd scenes. I just really like spending time with these former criminal animals and the inventive heists they pull off. The Day the Earth Blew Up, a Looney Tunes movie. For a while, there was uncertainty whether this film would even be released because of unfortunate corporate decisions over at Warner Brothers. Thankfully, it was able to reach screens and become a really funny showcase for Daffy Duck and Porky Pig. They've long been paired up in multiple Looney Tunes projects, and this captured a lot of that humor and energy with a clear Bob Clampett influence. The idea of this alien invasion and Daffy and Porky, along with Petunia Pig, being pulled into the middle of it was a great one. I especially like the way it handled Daffy, who I've often named the greatest cartoon character of all time, for the way different directors like Clampett, Tex Avery, and Chuck Jones have utilized and evolved him. The Day the Earth Blew Up goes for the wackier version of Daffy, but also one with a a solid, if somewhat strained friendship with Porky. There's a solid idea here of Porky getting fed up with Daffy's antics and how that affects the film's events. When it gets into the alien invasion plot, director Peter Brongart and the rest of the storyboarding team go all out in showing how horrifying it is, but without losing that humor. The alien trying to put this plan into fruition becomes an entertaining character too, wonderfully voiced by Peter McNichol. The animation has that classic Looney Tunes feel, and the number of inspired scenes that pay homage to the classic cartoons are great, including the use of the musical piece Powerhouse. There have been multiple attempts to make a feature-length Looney Tunes movie, and The Day the Earth Blew Up stands as one of the best ones in my opinion. Elio. A very touching space adventure. One of the things that most stood out to me about this film was the title character himself. There's a relatability there with him feeling like he does not belong, and how his fascination with aliens on the world outside of Earth gives him comfort. That drives so many of his actions throughout the film. While he does not always make the right choice, you can see Elio is trying his best. Early marketing materials made it seem like Elio was initially scared to go into outer space, and I'm really glad they changed that to make him excited at being abducted. When we enter this alien version of the UN, the filmmakers and artists come up with so many wonderful designs for the various inhabitants there. Shout out to longtime Pixar production designer Harley Jessup for his work, and it's an example of how much I really enjoy when the studio depicts alien worlds and beings. The friendship Elio strikes up with Glorodon is especially sweet, and having Elio raised by his aunt allows for an interesting dynamic there. Additionally, the humor surrounding a clone of Elio that gets dropped off on Earth is very funny. There's a message here about the trickiness that can come with creating negotiations with others holding a battle-focused mindset, but you still need to be truthful when dealing with that. There are all these little touches throughout Elio, and the film balances the multiple themes well, creating something that may take a little while longer than the usual Pixar film to find an audience, but I think it will get there thanks to its heart, creativity, and relatable protagonist. And my number one favorite animated movie of 2025 is Arco. A French animated film from first-time feature director Hugo Bienvenu. This is an inventive take on the time travel story with a boy who ends up accidentally going back several centuries. Bienvenu put a lot of thought into how these two futuristic time periods function and shows quite a bit of imagination in depicting the connection formed between Arco and a girl named Iris. I like how they work together to figure out how to get him back home while also having some amusing fish-out-of-water jokes here and there. There's a lot of funny parts involving the three men trying to locate Arco, humorously voiced by Will Ferrell, Andy Samberg, and Flea in the English language dub. Even a robot assistant becomes an important character here, and in this age of so many people relying on AI technology, this film shows what a society like that could be like and the issues involved. The film has a unique look to it with some vibrant images, especially involving Arco's rainbow outfit. There's an interest throughout in seeing how Arco can return home, and the film manages to move at a solid pace through its 82 minutes. I'll expand further my thoughts when I review Arco for its expanded release early next year, but I'm pleased to put it at the top of my animated movie ranking for 2025. But what do we have to look forward to in 2026? Well, as usual, we'll see the return of several familiar characters in sequels like Woody and Buzz Lightyear, the Super Mario Bros., Minions, Angry Birds, Paw Patrol, Shaun the Sheep, and Greg Heffley. Meanwhile, Aang, the Last Airbender, will get his first theatrical animated feature, as will The Cat in the Hat. We'll finally be getting Laika's new movie next year with Wildwood, although my biggest question remains, as of this recording, who the distributor will be. Andy Serkis's long-in-the-works adaptation of George Orwell's Animal Farm will also be hitting theaters in 2026. Then we have an assortment of original animated films reaching screens from a variety of studios. Pixar has Hoppers about a young woman who meets up with woodland animals. Disney Animation brings us a new magical world with Hexed. Sony Pictures Animation is heading to the basketball courts with Goat. And DreamWorks Animation sends two friends to the mystical world of Forgotten Island. Skydance Animation is releasing two original films as well. Nathan Greno's Swap, about a bird and a woodland creature who switch places, and Brad Bird's longtime film noir passion project, Ray Gun. Those will debut on Netflix, which will have their own slate of animated films, including one about Cinderella's stepsisters. There will likely be several more worthwhile animated movies from around the world, and I'm certainly curious about many of them and seeing what will eventually make next year's list. Now let me know in the comments what your favorite animated films of 2025 are, and I'll see you next time.